Time Walk with Me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. Today we're taking a look at another EDH deck of mine. This one is headed up by Ghalta, Primal Hunger. He is a 12/12 for 10 of any and 2 green, and he costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. And he's got trample, of course. So this deck is all about getting enough creatures out to decrease Ghalta's mana cost. No, it doesn't actually decrease his mana cost. To decrease the amount of mana it costs to cast Ghalta, so that you can keep on casting him over and over again, and your opponent will never be rid of him. Now, I got a lot of the idea of this deck from the Commander's Quarters. So we're going to start here with the vehicles, because vehicles usually cost less to cast than their power. So here first we have Raider's Carve. It is a 4/4 for 3, and its crew is 3. And the cool thing about vehicles, the ridiculous thing about vehicles, is that you can crew a vehicle with a vehicle. Unless that's not true, but I think that's true. So you can put a dinosaur in a boat and then have the boat crewed by the dinosaur crew the Iron Tread Crusher, which is the next card here, a 6/6 for 4 with a crew 3. So you can just do silly things like that. Next we have Sleek Schooner, 4/3 for 3 with crew 1, so it's very easy to crew that one. Consulate Dreadnought, a 7/11 for 1 with a crew 6, so that's a little steep, but not really. Next is Aradara Express, an 8/6 for 5 with Menace and crew 4. We got Bomat Bazaar Barge, a 5/5 for 4, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, crew 3. Funeral Longboat, a 3/3 for 2 with Vigilance and crew 1. And that's it. Those are all of the vehicles. I think Kamigawa actually had a lot of vehicles in it, so I could probably look in there if I wanted more. But now we've got some regular creatures too. Oh, except first we got an equipment. Nettlecyst. It is a living weapon, so when it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/0 Phyrexian Germ, and then it gets attached to it. An equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Now this deck is full of vehicles, so those are artifacts. So you're going to get a pretty good-sized creature for just 3 mana. Hopefully at least a 4/4, because all the creatures in here, or most of the creatures in here, have higher power than their mana cost. Not this one, though, exactly. Ferez Band Tromper. It's a 3/3 for 4, but whenever it becomes untapped, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And when you tap him to crew vehicles, guess what happens to him the next turn? He untaps. We got Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi. For 5 mana, one of your lands becomes a 9/9 legendary elemental creature with haste. So that helps a lot in decreasing the mana cost of Ghalta. Elemental Uprising. Target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. So for 2 mana, you decrease the casting cost of Ghalta by 4. So that's pretty good. Gnarled Professor, a 5/4 trample for 4 mana, and you would expect there to be a downside, but there is not. When he enters the battlefield, learn. So you can either reveal a lesson from outside the game, which you can't do, or discard a card to draw a card. And that's a May, I think. So you could just have this be a 5/4 for 4 with trample. Good stuff. Lurking Roper, 4/5, doesn't untap during your untap step. That doesn't matter because it's only here to decrease Ghalta's casting cost. And whenever you gain life, untap Lurking Roper. Not really a gain life deck, but whatever. It's 4 power for 3 mana. Relic Golem, a 6/6 for 3. It can't attack or block unless an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, but that doesn't matter because that's 6 power for 3 mana. Juggernaut, a 5/3 for 4. He attacks each combat if able, but if he's tapped to crew a vehicle, he can't attack, so that gets around that. Chief of the Foundry, 2/3 for 3, but other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1, so it makes your vehicles bigger when they're crewed. Runaway Carriage, it's a 5/6 for 4. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat, but you can instead just crew vehicles. Hill Giant Herd Gorger, 7/6 for 6, and when he enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. Garrick's Companion, a 3/2 trample for 2 mana. Good deal. Drowsing Tyrannodon, a 3/3 with Defender for 2 mana. The Defender doesn't matter, and in fact, Defender creatures can still crew vehicles. Imagine a wall crewing a vehicle. But hey, it can happen. And as long as you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Drowsing Pteranodon can attack as though it didn't have Defender, but whatever, that doesn't matter. Wolfbriar Elemental, it's a 4/4 for 4, but it has multi-kicker, and a multi-kicker of only 1 green, and every time you pay that kicker, you get a 2/2, so you get 2 more power for every 1 mana. So that's a good bargain. Tangleweave Armor, this card right here is so good in this deck. It's got Living Weapon, so it automatically creates a 0/0 dude to put this on. Equipped creature gets +X/+X, where X is the greatest mana value among your commanders. The mana value of Ghalta Primal Hunger, as you know, is 12. So, for 4 mana, you get a 12/12. That is simply amazing. Shambling Suit, for 3 mana, you get a star 3, where star is the number of artifacts and or enchantments you control. That's a good, that'll be big. Honor Troll, 2/3 for 3, but it's got Vigilance. If you would gain life, you gain that much +1 instead. That doesn't matter, but Honor Troll gets +2/+1 as long as you have 25 or more life, which you're going to because it's Commander. So it's actually a 4/4 for 3 mana. Waker of the Wilds, it is a 3/3 for 4, but for X and 2 green, you can put X +1/+1 counters on a land you control. That land becomes a 0/0 elemental with haste, and it's still a land. So that's good. And you can keep on putting more and more +1/+1 counters on the same land creature if you want. Sparring Construct, a 1/1 for 1, and when he dies, his 1/1 goes on another creature. So the power of that creature is conserved if he dies onto another creature. Mech Titan Core, I just think this is a fun card. It's a 2/4 for 2, and a vehicle with crew 2. For 5 of any, you can exile it and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control. And you create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. And when that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core except Mech Titan Core to the battlefield tapped into their opponent's control. Under their owner's control. Whoops. Then we got Clay Golem, 4/4. You can give him Monstrosity X, where X is the result of a D8 roll. And when he becomes monstrous, destroy target permanent. So that's kind of a cool bonus there. A little interaction. Battle Mammoth, 6/5 trample for 5. And whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. And it's got Foretell. Titanic Brawl. Costs 1 less if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter. Oh yeah, here we go. These are all fight cards. So these are meant to turn Ghalta into a destroyer of creatures. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. And even if that results in Ghalta's death, you can just cast him again for 2 mana every time. Next we got Prey Upon. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Ram Through. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. And if the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So that's cool. Ghalta does have trample, so yeah. Savage Punch. For 2 mana, you have target creature you control fight a creature you don't control. And the creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn before it fights if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you will with Ghalta. So, Devouring Tendrils. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker that you don't control. And when the permanent you don't control dies this turn, you gain 2 life. So you get rewarded for your destruction. Next we have Rabid Bite. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. That's a little better than fighting, because it's just damage going from your creature to theirs. Bite Down, something that a T-Rex really likes to do. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control, so you can destroy a planeswalker too. Epic Confrontation, target creature you control gets +1/+2 until end of turn, then it fights a creature you don't control. Nature's Way, target creature you control gains Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So you can cast this and still attack with it. Goreclaw, Terror of Qualsisma. It's a 4/3 for 4, but it decreases the amount of your creatures with power 4 or greater by 2. So in all, it decreases Ghalta's cost by 6, because this is a 4/3. And whenever it attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn, which doesn't really matter because Ghalta already has trample. Joyous Familiar, historic spells you cast cost 1 less, so that helps you with your artifact creatures and your vehicles. Foundry Inspector, artifacts your artifacts cost 1 less. Scare Tiller, whenever it becomes tapped, say to crew a vehicle, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Very handy. Scaled Herbalist or Herbalist. Tap it to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Nature's Lore. Search your library first. Sakura Tribe Elder. Sacrifice him to look for a basic land. Put it on the battlefield tapped. You happen upon a Glade. This one lets you search for 2 basic lands and put them into your hand, or return a permanent from the graveyard to your hand. Either way, very handy. 3 visits, search your library for a forest, put it on the battlefield, not tapped. For 2 mana, that's not bad. Reap and Sow, you can either destroy a land or look for a land and put it into play, untapped, unless it comes into play tapped, and then shuffle your library, or you can pay 2 mana in addition to do both. Yavimaya Elder, so when he dies, you can search your library for up to 2 basic lands, reveal them, put them into your hand, and you can sacrifice him to draw a card. And then his death trigger will happen. Tangled Florahedron. He is a 1/1 for 2 that taps for a green, or you can play it as a land that taps for a green, but comes into play tapped. A bit the same either way, but in one case you get a 1/1 body on the board, in case you need that. Find the Path is an enchant land that makes you venture into the dungeon. It's not really a dungeon deck. This is just in here to make you to tap for 2 green. Whisper of the Wilds taps for a green, or you can tap it for 2 green if you control the creature with power 4 or greater, which Ghalta is. In Search of Greatness, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a permanent spell from your hand with converted mana cost equal to 1, plus the highest converted mana cost among other permanents you control without paying its mana cost. Now, if you have Ghalta out, that part of this enchantment will be quite useless, but the scrying 1 every turn is also pretty useful. Momentous Fall. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. The idea is that you will be sacrificing Ghalta, because you can easily just cast him again. You draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, that's 12, and then you gain life equal to its toughness, which is 12. 12 cards, 12 life, that's a good deal. Triumph of Ferocity, at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control the creature with greatest power or tied for the greatest power. You most likely will with Ghalta, but who knows? Hunter's Insight, choose a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. So Ghalta hopefully will give you 12 cards. Colossal Majesty, at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which Ghalta is. Lifecrafter's Bestiary. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, that's pretty good, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay a green to draw a card. Broken Wings, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. A little bit of interaction there. Return to Nature, choose 1, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. Little graveyard hate there, potentially. Crushing Vine, you can destroy an artifact or a creature with flying. Broken Bond, destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. That's pretty dang good for 2 mana. It's a sorcery, though, so that's the slight downside to that. Naturalize, destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's a classic card. Plummet, destroy target creature with flying. Flying creatures are a bit of a bane of green's existence. Here we have a Gaia's Cradle. Mine is fake, of course, but if you have a real one, by all means put it in here. Tap for a green for every creature you control. Fertile Thickets, when it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it comes into play, you can look at the top 5 cards of your library, then reveal up to one basic land card from among them, so maybe 0, maybe 1. Then put that card on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in any order. So this is a good opening hand land. Opal Palace taps for a colorless or one of any and tap it, and it can add a mana of any color in your commander's color identity, in this case green. And if you cast your commander, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it for every time you've cast it this game, which can be a lot because he'll pretty much always cost 2 mana to cast. Myriad Landscape gives you a little bit of ramp there, a little later on in the game. Gingerbread Cabin, this gives you a food token if you have other lands out. And then we've got a boatload of forests, because, you know, it's a green deck. Why wouldn't you have forests in a green deck? So that's it. That is Ghalta Primal Hunger. Tell me what you think, what you really, really think, and I'll see you next time.